Hi, welcome to the second episode of Mind Stretch. If you caught the first one, you know my name is ALANA. I have experience working in the field of mental health, and I was a competitive Irish dancer for 15 years. Today we're going to be diving into a great question we received from a follower who vulnerably shared that she's been having a really hard time feeling motivated to engage with all the virtual training offerings that are coming from her teachers through her studio, whether that be individual training videos or virtual classes. And I thought that experience sounded really relatable and like something we could dive right into. So what's happening for us right now is we are having a collective experience of trauma. That's what this pandemic of coronavirus, you can call it whatever you want, that's what that is for a lot of people. Assuming that everyone is able to say that everyone following along here is able to say that they're safe and healthy, what we're having is an experience of trauma, not of big T trauma, not violence or abuse or neglect, which is very serious, but little t trauma. Sometimes we break it into those two categories. I tend to use a pretty generous definition of trauma just in discussion, and when I talk about trauma, what I'm talking about is anything that changes our sense of safety, our sense of security, our previous perception of the way things are, just the way of the world, that can trigger a response, a trauma response. And I talked a little bit about some of the physiological responses, meaning like what goes on in our brain and our body when it kicks into survival mode in the first episode of Mind Stretch, but some additional trauma responses, and I'm going to rattle them off, and I'm guessing, because I've experienced most of them, that a lot of them will sound familiar to people following along. I'm not hoping, but I'm thinking. And then we'll go from there. So for starters, it is totally normal if right now you're feeling really irritable, if you're having difficulty focusing, difficulty sleeping, if you're sleeping a lot, if it feels like no matter how much sleep you get, you're still tired, if you feel sad, if you feel confused, if you feel scared, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like you don't want to talk to anyone, like things you once really enjoyed, like maybe going to class or dancing, suddenly you don't find you don't get that much from them. It's also totally normal if you feel nothing at all. If you just feel numb and detached, it's very normal if you've felt all of those things, if you feel them up and down, day to day, hour by hour. We are all having a collective experience of trauma, and these are very common trauma responses. So to the follower that asked or that shared that she was feeling unmotivated, you are not doing it wrong. It is totally normal, and you are doing the very best you can, I have no doubt. And to anyone that relates to any of the symptoms I just described, you are not doing it wrong. It is totally normal. We are all doing our best. So introducing some self-compassion and recognizing how much you're doing just by getting up and showing up for yourself every day is really, I couldn't start by responding to this follower's question without starting right there. But what happens when our sense of security and certainty is threatened is we tend to want to find it. We tend to want to find things that make us feel like, okay, I get it. This makes me feel secure and certain and safe. It's an instinct, it makes perfect sense, but a lot of times what we do is we create like a false sense of security. So we slip into either or thinking, and we start thinking that things have to be black and white, that like either we're doing this or this, like either I'm motivated to practice every day or I'm not doing enough, I'm lazy, I'm productive, doing it wrong, whatever. And the antidote to that is what I call both and thinking. I think it'll be super helpful during this time, but I use it all the time. I use it year round. It gives me so much more space to experience things as they are. It allows me to feel like my most authentic self because I'm not trying to fit myself into really rigid bubbles, essentially. I'm not backing myself up into an either or corner. I'm saying something like, I'm not motivated to train today and I'm still going to show up. That's an example of both and thinking. I'm allowing space for both of those things to exist at the exact same time. The power of and, the word and, is so profound when it comes to just reclaiming a sense of peace and power in times of uncertainty. It allows us to experience all of these things at once. So some go-to examples of both and thinking that I want to offer you today are, I'm feeling unmotivated and I'm showing up. I'm doing less than I was last week, yesterday, a couple months ago, and I'm still doing enough. I'm confused and I'm committed. I'm frustrated and I'm hopeful. I feel scared and I feel strong. All of these things can exist at the exact same time, and our power is in recognizing that and allowing ourselves the grace and the space to let that all come up and to feel all the things that we're feeling as they happen. The last piece of what this follower shared, just to round it out, is that fear of teachers being mad, or let's just extend it to anyone external being disappointed in what we can or can't do during this time or at all. I would challenge anyone who relates to that, while I'm certain it is relatable, to reflect on who it is that you dance for. At the Well Winner, we talk a lot about connecting to our why, and I think included in that conversation is connecting to our who it is that we're dancing for. And I don't mean whose school we're dancing for, what teachers we're representing when we compete. What I mean is, why do you dance and who do you dance for? And if the answer is anyone but yourself, I understand that there are going to be moments where we slip into worry and fear of what others, like teachers and parents, will think if we do or do not do something. But that is a great opportunity to remind ourselves, what I'm hoping is that we dance for ourselves. And the reality is, if the answer is anyone but yourself, it's probably always going to be hard. You're probably always going to feel unmotivated because you're not doing it for, I rarely say for the right person, but you're not doing it for the right person. It really does have to be for yourself. So my challenge is to take a minute to reflect on that. Much like the techniques that I shared in my first episode of Mind Stretch, which are still available for you to go check out, the technique of both and thinking is a practice. It takes time to notice when you're slipping into either or thinking, and it takes time to get comfortable reframing. It's a different example of reframing, which I talked about in the first episode, either or thinking into both and thinking. But just to reiterate an earlier point, it is one of the surest and most authentic ways I know to find a sense of security in times of extreme uncertainty and to reclaim our peace and our power. So I think I'm going to wrap up there. I want to thank everyone for tuning in again, or for the first time, welcome. I'm growing and learning as we do this, so your likes, comments, feedback messages, etc., they're all so important and so meaningful. We read every single thing that all of you comment and send and repost and message. It means so much, and I am so serious. It shapes so much of what we do, because when we started this, it really was about creating a community and a conversation, and it means nothing if people aren't a part of it and engaging in the conversation. So thank you so much for being here. Keep your eyes peeled for the questions bubble. I will be having future episodes of Mind Stretch, and I can't do it without your questions. I mean, it could, but it's a lot more fun when I get to answer real questions from all of you. So stay tuned, and I will see you next time.